Hi, welcome back, and welcome to Lesson 5, which is adapted from my book, Babette's Quick Start Guide to Theory for Fiddlers. This lesson is about major scales. And as with everything else we've learned so far, major scales also have patterns. And these patterns refer to the space between the notes. And there's two words that are commonly used for those spaces, and they're words that I use. And those are whole steps and half steps. And we could think of a whole step this way, as that there is space between your fingers. Try to keep this not in front of my face. Space between your fingers. In fact, another finger could fit in there. That's a whole step. If your fingers are touching or nearly touching, that's a half step. So we have whole steps and half steps. Now the pattern is whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step. So there are 2 whole steps and then a half step, then 3 whole steps and a half step. So we have whole step, half step, whole step, half step. Now let's say that together, okay? Whole step, half step, whole step, half step. There are 12 major keys. This pattern is the same for all 12 major keys. One thing that you need to remember is that a major scale is going to start and end on the name of the key. So for example, if we're playing in the key of G, which we know has 1 sharp, then the scale is going to start on G and it's going to end on the next higher occurrence of that G. That is, if you're working up. If you're playing in the key of A, where there are 3 sharps, the scale will start on A and it will end on A. So one more time, what is that pattern? Whole step, half step, whole step, half step. This is how the major scale finger pattern looks on the violin. Finger tapes have been put on the fingerboard to mark the position of the first, second, and third fingers. Notice the big space on the fingerboard between the scroll and the first finger tape. That's where you'd put your first finger, and that big space is your whole step. The space between that and the next tape is another whole step. That would be your second finger. The third finger is closer to the second finger, and that is a half step. By looking at this visual, it is pretty easy to see that there are 2 half steps in a whole step. Now let's say that pattern one more time. Whole step, half step, whole step, half step. Okay, now please pause this video and take a look at this worksheet, and I'll see you back in a couple of minutes. Here we go. Question number 1. What is the major scale finger pattern? Whole step, half step, whole step, half step. Question 2. If the notes are a whole step apart, are your fingers touching? The answer is no. Question 3. What does W mean? That means whole step. Question 4. What does H mean? And that means half step. Now for the review questions. Number 1. What finger and string can you play the following note on? The note is B, and there are 3 of them. The second finger on the G string, the first finger on the A string, and the fourth finger on the E string. Question 2, mark B on the staff. We know the staff goes from bottom to top. Every good boy does fine. E, G, B, D, F. So that B is going to be on the third line up. Question 3. How do you remember the names of the lines from the bottom up? And I just said that. 4. How many notes in the first position on the violin are not on the staff? Well, all of the notes on the G string, so that's open G, first finger, second finger, third finger, and fourth finger. Right there, there's 5. And on the E string, it would start with the second finger G, third finger A, and fourth finger B. So there's 3. So 3 plus 5 is 8. Question 5. How do you find the sharps on the violin? Remember, we take our second finger, place it on the D string. That would be F sharp. Then we move it up to the A string. In the same position, that's C sharp. Then we move it up again to the E string, same position, and that is G sharp. And question 6. How many sharps are in the key of D? Well, I think you probably know this one by now, but we're counting our strings from the lowest to the highest. G, D, A, and E. D is the second string, so there are 2 sharps. And what are they? Those 2 sharps are F sharp and C sharp.